She thought she had lost everything the day her husband walked away. After years of marriage, sacrifice, and unwavering loyalty, he looked her in the eyes and told her the words no wife ever expects to hear. "I've found someone better, someone who matches the life I deserve." Then he left her for a glamorous woman he proudly called an upgrade. What he didn't know was that the quiet woman he abandoned had been hiding a secret so unbelievable that it would soon shake the entire city. While he mocked her simple lifestyle and underestimated her worth, she was secretly the wealthiest woman in town, a powerful business magnate whose fortune dwarfed anything he could ever imagine. For months, he flaunted his new relationship, convinced he had made the best decision of his life. But everything changed the day he accidentally discovered her true identity. The moment the truth came out, his world collapsed. What he did next stunned everyone. Desperate, ashamed, and blinded by greed, he launched a shocking plan to reclaim the life he had thrown away. But he never expected the woman he betrayed to respond the way she did. Instead of revenge, tears, or forgiveness, she made a decision so bold, so unexpected, and so powerful that it left the city speechless and changed every life involved forever. This isn't just a story about wealth and betrayal. It's a story about hidden power, devastating regret, and a woman who proved that true value can never be measured by appearances. Her name was Evelyn Hart. At least that was the name her husband knew. For 7 years, Michael Hart had believed he was married to an ordinary woman, a quiet woman, a woman who wore simple cotton dresses, made her own coffee instead of buying expensive lattes, and drove a 12-year-old gray sedan that rattled whenever it rained. He used to find those things charming. In the beginning, when he had nothing but ambition and unpaid bills, Evelyn's simplicity had felt like comfort. She had believed in him when his business ideas failed, when landlords knocked on their apartment door, when his friends laughed behind his back and called him a dreamer with no direction. Back then, he would hold her hand across their tiny kitchen table and say, "One day, Eve, I'll give you the life you deserve." And she would smile, though there was always something mysterious in her eyes, something deep and knowing. "I already have enough," she would tell him. Michael never understood that answer. He thought it meant she had small dreams. He did not know it meant she had seen more wealth by the age of 25 than he could imagine in a lifetime. Years before she met Michael, Evelyn Hartwell had stood beside her grandfather's hospital bed while rain beat against the windows of the tallest private medical tower in the city. Alexander Hartwell, founder of Hartwell Global Holdings, had built half the skyline. His ships moved goods across oceans. His hotels carried his crest in 5 countries. His banks financed the very men who later pretended they were self-made. But on that night, with machines humming softly beside him, Alexander had looked at his only granddaughter with tired, sharp eyes. "Money," he whispered, "is a mirror. It does not change people, it reveals them." Evelyn was 23 then, dressed in black, her hair tied back, her face still carrying the softness of a young woman who wanted to believe the world was kinder than it was. Her parents had died when she was 16. After that, she had been raised inside marble halls by tutors, lawyers, board members, and a grandfather who loved her fiercely but trusted almost no one. "Hide your name," he told her, "not forever, just long enough to know who loves you without it." A week later, Alexander Hartwell passed away. A month after that, the city's newspapers announced that control of Hartwell Global had transferred to a private trust. Nobody knew the true heir had stepped away from public life and moved into a modest apartment under the shortened name Evelyn Hart. She did not do it because she hated money. She did it because she had watched people bow to her last name before they heard her speak. When she met Michael at a community business workshop, he was wearing a wrinkled shirt and carrying a folder full of proposals no investor had accepted. He spoke too loudly, laughed too nervously, and stayed behind afterward to stack chairs because the elderly organizer had a bad knee. That was the first thing Evelyn noticed. Not his face, not his confidence, not his dreams. His kindness. At least, what she believed was kindness. Their love began quietly, long walks, shared meals, dreams whispered beneath leaking ceilings. Michael wanted status, but Evelyn told herself ambition was not a sin. He wanted to prove people wrong, and she understood that hunger. She had spent her own life being measured by men who thought age and gender made her less capable. So she helped him, invisibly. When his first company nearly failed, an anonymous investor appeared. When his loan was denied, a different bank suddenly reconsidered. When he needed access to a supplier, the supplier called him first. Michael thought luck had finally found him. Evelyn let him believe it. Not because she wanted to deceive him cruelly, but because she wanted him to stand without feeling indebted to her. She wanted a husband, not a man kneeling before her fortune. For a while, it worked. Then success touched Michael's shoulder, and slowly he became a stranger wearing her husband's face. He began correcting her in public. He told her which dresses looked too plain. He stopped inviting her to business dinners because, as he said once while adjusting his expensive watch, "You don't really fit in with those people." Evelyn had looked at him calmly. "And who are those people?" He had sighed as if explaining the world to a child. "People with taste, influence, presence." That night, as he slept beside her, Evelyn lay awake and remembered her grandfather's voice. "Money is a mirror." The next morning, she made breakfast like usual. But she also called her chief legal officer from the garden and said, "Review every document connected to Michael Hart's companies," quietly. The lawyer paused. "Is there a problem, Ms. Hartwell?" Evelyn watched Michael through the kitchen window as he frowned at his reflection in a spoon, practicing a smile he had likely planned to use at some executive lunch. "Not yet," she said. But even then, something inside her knew a storm was gathering. The storm arrived wearing red perfume and diamonds. Cassandra Vale entered Michael's life at a private networking event. She was beautiful in the deliberate way of women who knew every room was a stage. She laughed at his jokes, touched his arm when he spoke, and looked impressed by stories Evelyn had heard 100 times. Unlike Evelyn, Cassandra never seemed content with enough. She wanted the best table, the best wine, the best view. She praised Michael's ambition and called him underestimated. She told him he had the aura of a man destined for more, if only he stopped dragging ordinary things behind him. Ordinary things. That was what Evelyn became. Michael did not leave all at once. He drifted first. Late nights, short answers, new cologne, passwords changed on devices he once left open. Then came the criticism, sharper and more public than before. "You should do something with your hair. Do you have to bring coupons everywhere? Sometimes I feel like I've outgrown this marriage." Evelyn heard the words before he said them. They appeared in small silences, in the way he pulled away from her touch, in the way he smiled at his phone but frowned when she entered a room. So when he finally stood in their living room with 2 suitcases and announced that Cassandra was an upgrade, Evelyn did not scream. She did not beg. She looked at the man she had once loved and saw, with painful clarity, the shape of his emptiness. On the coffee table between them sat a small silver envelope. He did not notice it. He had never noticed things that did not center him. Inside that envelope was an invitation addressed to Evelyn Hartwell for the annual Hartwell Foundation Gala, where she was expected to appear publicly for the first time in years. Michael walked out before the rain started. By morning, the entire city seemed to know. Not officially, of course, but wealthy circles fed on humiliation, and Michael gave them a feast. He posted photographs with Cassandra on rooftop lounges. He appeared at restaurants Evelyn had secretly helped him afford. He let people whisper that his first wife had been sweet but uninspiring, loyal but limited, the kind of woman men married before they understood their own value. Once, at a charity luncheon, Evelyn overheard two women discussing her near the restroom. "Poor thing," one said, "he was always too polished for her." The other laughed softly, "Some women are stepping stones." Evelyn washed her hands, dried them carefully, and walked out without looking at either woman. That evening, she opened the hidden floor safe in her study and removed her grandfather's signet ring. It was too large for her finger, made of old gold, engraved with the Hartwell crest. She had not worn it in years. She placed it on the desk, beside Michael's abandoned wedding photograph, and stared at the two symbols of her life. One represented inheritance, the other illusions. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. 3 months later, Michael discovered the truth by accident. It happened at the Hartwell Foundation Gala, the most exclusive event of the season. Cassandra had begged him to get invitations. Michael, desperate to prove he belonged among the city's elite, had spent weeks calling favors until a minor associate finally secured 2 seats near the back. He wore a black tuxedo and arrived with Cassandra on his arm. She sparkled in silver, smiling as photographers captured her angles. "This," she whispered, squeezing his hand, "is where we should have been all along." Michael lifted his chin. "Yes," he said, "exactly." Inside, crystal chandeliers threw light across hundreds of powerful faces. Mayors, CEOs, judges, designers, investors. The kind of people who did not check prices on menus. The kind of people Michael had spent years trying to impress. Then the lights dimmed. A man stepped onto the stage and welcomed the guests. Michael barely listened until the host said, "Tonight, we honor the woman whose vision has expanded the Hartwell Foundation into the largest private charitable network in the region. For years, she has chosen discretion over applause. But tonight, she has agreed to stand before the city not as a rumor, not as a signature on a donation, but as herself. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Evelyn Hartwell." Michael's champagne glass froze halfway to his lips. At first, he thought it was a coincidence. Then she stepped onto the stage. Evelyn, not in a cotton dress, not with tired eyes from waiting up for a husband who came home smelling like someone else's perfume, not as the woman he had dismissed. She wore deep emerald silk, simple but devastatingly elegant. Her hair was swept back, revealing diamond earrings that caught the light like stars. On her right hand was an old gold signet ring. The room rose to its feet. Applause thundered. Michael could not breathe. Cassandra's smile faltered. "Michael," she whispered, "is that?" "My wife," he said before he could stop himself. Cassandra's hand slipped from his arm. "Your ex-wife," she corrected coldly. On stage, Evelyn spoke with calm authority. She announced the Foundation's new housing initiative, a medical fund for children, and a business grant program for women rebuilding their lives after personal and financial hardship. Every word struck Michael like a stone. He remembered the anonymous investor, the bank approval, the supplier call, the quiet confidence in Evelyn's eyes whenever he bragged about being self-made. A terrible understanding opened beneath him. He had not risen above her. He had been standing on ground she built. After the speech, guests surrounded Evelyn. They kissed her cheeks, shook her hand, thanked her for donations, partnerships, rescue loans, scholarships, hospitals, shelters, entire careers. Michael watched from across the ballroom as men far richer than him lowered their heads respectfully when she spoke. And for the first time in years, he saw her clearly. Not as plain, not as small, not as someone beneath the life he deserved. As the life he had thrown away. He pushed through the crowd before Cassandra could stop him. "Evelyn!" She turned. For 1 second, something old passed between them. A kitchen table, rain on a thin window, 2 young people eating noodles from chipped bowls. The memory was so vivid Michael almost reached for it. Then it vanished. "Michael," she said. Not coldly, That made it worse. There was no anger in her voice, only distance. I didn't know, he said. Her eyes rested on him. No, you didn't. You should have told me. A few people nearby went still. Cassandra appeared behind him, her face tight with panic and calculation. Evelyn tilted her head slightly. Would it have changed how you treated me? Michael opened his mouth. No answer came. Because all around him stood the truth. If he had known, he would have praised the same dresses he mocked. He would have called her modesty elegance. He would have mistaken his greed for love and expected reward for staying. Evelyn saw the answer anyway. Enjoy the evening, she said, and turned away. That should have been the end. But greed does not accept closed doors. It searches for windows, cracks, forgotten keys. Within 48 hours, Michael became obsessed. He searched articles, filings, old business records. He barely slept. Cassandra tried to convince him they could use this. You were married to her, she said, packing his apartment. There must be something, property, shares, hidden assets, emotional damages, anything. Michael wanted to reject the idea, but his pride was bleeding. Everywhere he went, people looked at him differently. Men who once admired him now smirked into their glasses. Women who had pitied Evelyn now avoided his gaze. Someone at his club joked that Michael Hart had traded a kingdom for costume jewelry. He laughed along, then went home and smashed a glass against the wall. The next week, he did something Evelyn never expected. He filed a public legal claim against her. Not quietly, not respectfully. Publicly. The lawsuit accused Evelyn of deception during their marriage. It claimed she had hidden her wealth to manipulate him emotionally and financially. It suggested he had been deprived of the lifestyle, opportunities, and marital benefits he would have enjoyed had he known her true identity. The tabloids devoured it. Man's secret billionaire wife stole his future. Cities Richest woman accused of marriage deception. Abandoned husband or humiliated gold digger. For 3 days, Evelyn said nothing. Her board begged her to respond. Her public relations team prepared statements. Her lawyers smiled the patient smiles of professionals who knew they were holding a winning hand. But Evelyn remained silent because the lawsuit itself did not wound her. What wounded her was the memory of Michael at 29, holding her hand in a hospital corridor after she had visited an old employee dying of cancer. You care too much, he had told her then. She had leaned against his shoulder. Someone has to. Back then, he had kissed the top of her head. Now he was telling the world she had stolen his future because she had not handed him her fortune. The night before the first hearing, Evelyn returned to the old apartment where they had once lived. She still owned the building, though Michael never knew. She stood outside beneath a flickering street lamp, looking up at the third-floor window where they had spent their poorest, happiest year. In her mind, she saw him younger, laughing as rain leaked into a cooking pot on the floor. She saw herself wrapping a towel around his shoulders. She remembered how they had danced barefoot to music from a cheap radio because the electricity had failed in half the apartment. I'm going to be somebody, he had said. You already are, she had answered. She wished he had believed her. A black car waited at the curb. Inside sat Nora, Evelyn's oldest friend and the only person outside the Hartwell legal circle who had known everything from the beginning. You don't have to be merciful, Nora said when Evelyn returned to the car. Evelyn looked out the window. I know. He tried to humiliate you. Yes. He called another woman an upgrade. Evelyn's lips curved faintly, but there was no humor in it. He was wrong about many things. Nora studied her. What are you going to do? Evelyn touched the signet ring on her hand. For years she had believed power was something best kept hidden unless necessary. Her grandfather had taught her patience, restraint, strategy. But he had also taught her one more thing, something he had said on a summer afternoon when she was 17 and furious at a board member who had spoken over her. When small people try to make you smaller, Evelyn, do not shrink. Build something so large their insult becomes irrelevant. At the courthouse the next morning, cameras lined the steps. Michael arrived in a navy suit, Cassandra beside him in white. He expected Evelyn to appear wounded or defensive. He imagined her hiding behind sunglasses, surrounded by lawyers, embarrassed by headlines. Instead, she stepped from her car alone. No sunglasses, no visible fear. The crowd surged, reporters shouting questions. "Ms. Hartwell, did you deceive your husband? Do you have a response to his accusations? Will you settle?" Evelyn paused. Michael's lawyer whispered urgently to him, but Michael could not look away. Evelyn faced the cameras. "I will not discuss private pain as public entertainment," she said, "but I will say this. No one is entitled to another person's dignity, fortune, or forgiveness simply because they regret their own choices." Then she walked inside. The hearing was brief and brutal. Evelyn's legal team presented prenuptial documents Michael had signed without reading carefully because, at the time, he believed Evelyn had nothing worth protecting. They presented evidence that anonymous funding to his businesses had come through independent channels with no claim attached. They showed that Evelyn had never taken money from him, never blocked his opportunities, never lied about debt, and never asked for support. Then Evelyn's lead attorney placed one final folder before the judge. It contained records of Michael's recent attempts to contact Hartwell executives, offering private information about Evelyn in exchange for investment consideration. Emails, voice messages, a dinner meeting with a journalist where he hinted he had damaging personal material if Hartwell refused to negotiate. Michael went pale. Cassandra stared at him. That part, apparently, she had not known. The judge dismissed Michael's claim and warned his legal team against further frivolous action. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Michael stood frozen as Evelyn gathered her papers. "Eve," he said softly. She stopped but did not turn. "I was angry." "Yes," she said. "I was humiliated." "Yes, I made a mistake." This time she looked back. "No, Michael, you made a choice, many of them." His face crumpled in a way that might once have broken her heart. "I loved you." Evelyn's gaze softened, and for a moment he thought he saw a door open. Then she said, "You loved who you thought I was when you believed I was useful, harmless, and beneath you. That was not love, that was comfort." She walked away before he could answer. But what she did afterward was what no one saw coming. The city expected revenge. People assumed Evelyn would sue him into ruin, blacklist Cassandra, buy Michael's company, and dismantle it piece by piece. Men like Michael expected cruelty because cruelty was what they understood. Society expected a spectacle because betrayal always sold better when someone bled. Instead, Evelyn called a press conference at the Hartwell Tower. Every major outlet came. Michael watched from his apartment, unshaven, surrounded by unopened mail and the ruins of his reputation. Cassandra sat across the room, silent. Their relationship had curdled quickly after the gala. The admiration she once had for him had been built on the illusion of rising power. Now she saw only a man who had fumbled a fortune and blamed the woman who once loved him. On screen, Evelyn stood before a blue backdrop bearing the Hartwell crest. "Over the past weeks," she began, "my private life has been made public in ways I would not have chosen. But I have decided that if my pain must become part of this city's conversation, then it will not be wasted." Michael leaned forward. A reporter asked, "Will you be taking legal action against your former husband?" "No," Evelyn said. The room stirred. "I will not spend my life punishing someone for failing to value me." Michael closed his eyes. For one wild second, he thought this was mercy. He thought perhaps he could call her later, apologize properly, appeal to the woman who used to leave soup outside a sick neighbor's door. Maybe some part of her still belonged to him. Then Evelyn continued. Today I am transferring $3 billion of my personal holdings into a new independent trust. The Hartwell Second Dawn Initiative will fund housing, education, legal support, and business grants for women and families rebuilding after betrayal, abandonment, financial control, or public humiliation. The room exploded with questions. Evelyn raised one hand, and silence slowly returned. This initiative will not carry my former husband's name. It will not be about him. It will not be about revenge. It will be about every person who has ever been told they were less than they are. Michael stared at the screen. $3 billion. Not hidden, not hoarded, not used to crush him. Released. Transformed. Made into something so large, his insult looked ridiculous beside it. Then Evelyn did the unimaginable. She invited Cassandra Vale to the stage. Michael stood so suddenly, his chair fell backward. Cassandra, sitting in his apartment, went still. On the television, the real Cassandra appeared from the side of the room. Not the Cassandra beside him, but the one at the press conference earlier that morning. Michael turned slowly. The chair, the room, the silent woman across from him. Empty. She had left before the announcement, and he had not even noticed. On screen, Cassandra looked pale but composed, gone with the diamonds and performance smiles. She wore a simple black suit, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Evelyn looked at her, then back at the reporters. Ms. Vale approached me privately last week, Evelyn said. She told me the truth about certain communications and provided information relevant to my former husband's case. She also told me something else, that for much of her life, she believed security could only be found by attaching herself to powerful men. Cassandra's eyes lowered. Evelyn continued, "Many will expect me to shame her. I will not. Shame rarely teaches, opportunity can." Cameras flashed wildly. Ms. Vale has agreed to enter a leadership development program under the Second Dawn Initiative. She will begin, not at the top, but in training, working with women who are building businesses from nothing. Whether she succeeds will depend entirely on her own character. Across the city, people gasped. Some criticized Evelyn, some praised her, some could not understand why a betrayed woman would extend a hand to the woman who had helped humiliate her. But Evelyn understood something they did not. Cassandra had not made Michael cruel. She had only revealed what already lived inside him. After the press conference, Michael called Evelyn 17 times. She did not answer. He sent flowers to Hartwell Tower. They were returned. He wrote a long email filled with apologies, memories, excuses, and desperate promises. He spoke of the old apartment, the rain, the woman she had been before all this. He said he wanted to start again. Evelyn read it once. Then she archived it. Months passed. The Second Dawn Initiative became more than a headline. It opened offices across the city. Women received grants to start bakeries, repair shops, childcare centers, design studios, transport services, and tech companies. Families moved into safe housing. Students returned to school. Legal clinics stayed open late into the night. On the wall of the first Second Dawn office, Evelyn placed a small framed sentence in her grandfather's handwriting. Money is a mirror. People often stopped to read it. Few knew what it meant to her. Michael's life, meanwhile, narrowed. His investors withdrew. His club membership was quietly suspended. Invitations vanished. The woman he had called an upgrade built a new life without him, one uncomfortable day at a time, learning humility in rooms where nobody cared how beautiful she was. One afternoon, almost a year after the divorce, Michael walked past a Second Dawn marketplace downtown. Dozens of small businesses had set up booths beneath white tents. The street was crowded with customers, music, children, and the warm smell of fresh bread. He saw Evelyn near the center of it all. She was not on stage. She was not surrounded by guards or reporters. She was helping an elderly woman adjust a display of handmade scarves. For a moment, Michael saw the woman from the kitchen again. The woman who had believed in him. The woman who had said he was already somebody. But this time, memory did not comfort him, it judged him. A little girl ran up to Evelyn and handed her a paper crown made of yellow construction paper. Evelyn laughed and placed it on her head with the seriousness of a queen accepting gold. Everyone around her clapped. Michael stood at the edge of the crowd, unseen. He finally understood the part that hurt most. Evelyn had not become powerful after he left. She had always been powerful. Her wealth was only the smallest part of it. He turned away before she could notice him, or perhaps she had noticed and simply chosen not to look. Years later, the city would still tell the story. Some told it as gossip about the foolish man who left the richest woman in town. Some told it as a warning about greed. Some told it as proof that quiet women should never be underestimated. But those who truly understood told it differently. They said Evelyn Hartwell had been handed betrayal and could have turned it into destruction. Instead, she turned it into doors. She could have used her fortune to make one man pay, but she used it to help thousands rise. She could have let humiliation define her, but she made it the foundation of something stronger than pride. And Michael, he became a footnote in a story he once thought was about him. As for Evelyn, she returned one evening to the old apartment building, now restored and converted into temporary housing for women starting over. Rain tapped against the windows just as it had years ago. In the third-floor kitchen, a young mother stood stirring soup while her son drew pictures at the table. The ceiling no longer leaked. The lights no longer flickered. Evelyn watched from the doorway with quiet satisfaction. Nora stood beside her. "Do you ever regret hiding who you were?" Nora asked. Evelyn thought about Michael, about Cassandra, about her grandfather, about the girl she had been, believing love could remain pure if money did not touch it. Then she looked at the child laughing over his drawing, safe and warm, because pain had been turned into shelter. "No," Evelyn said softly, "if I had not hidden my name, I might never have learned my worth had nothing to do with it." Outside, the rain washed the city clean. And for the first time in a long time, Evelyn did not feel like a woman who had lost something. She felt like a woman who had finally been returned to herself.